are days when you wake up and everything starts to fall apart. A message brings bad news, a text weighs heavy on your chest, and the plans you carefully laid out are suddenly overturned by something beyond your control. And then you ask yourself, why today? Why does everything seem against me? But the real threat isn't what happened. It's how you allow it to shape your entire day. We don't live by what happens to us. We live by how we respond to what happens. That's something Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca understood over 2,000 years ago. Stillness doesn't come from a world that stops being chaotic, but from a mind that refuses to be pulled into that chaos. Life will always bring disorder, surprises, and adversity, but you hold a power that no one can ever take from you: the ability to choose your response, to steady your mind, and to remain your own master. And to do that, you must begin with something that seems simple: the discipline of remaining calm. 1. Calm is not weakness, it's strength. I used to think a strong person was someone who always reacted quickly, always had the last word in an argument, always expressed emotions clearly so they wouldn't be underestimated. But life taught me a simple, powerful lesson. The one who loses control first is always the one who loses. In moments flooded with tension, I witnessed those who spoke the least having the greatest influence. They didn't need to yell, didn't need to prove anything. They just stood firm and everything around them naturally cooled. We live in a world where emotions are worn loudly, where anger is mistaken for strength, where reacting fast is labeled smart or sharp. But how many of your impulsive reactions have made you proud afterward? How many words have you spoken that later left you wishing, if only I'd stayed quiet? Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "A great man is he who keeps silence within, even when chaos surrounds him." He didn't write that just as a philosopher, but as an emperor, a man making decisions in the most turbulent moments of an empire. He understood that calm isn't the absence of emotion. It's the ability to observe your emotions without being consumed by them. It's a subtle kind of power, quiet, but deeply effective. Imagine you're in a courtroom. One side is the prosecution, the other is the defense. Who gets heard more clearly? The one slamming fists and shouting, or the one who speaks slowly, clearly, and directly? The answer is obvious. Calm doesn't weaken you, it earns you trust. It creates a space where others listen and where you're not ruled by fleeting emotions. I remember an important meeting years ago. A quiet colleague of mine was harshly blamed for a mistake that wasn't entirely his fault. Instead of defending himself, he simply nodded, apologized, and said, "Give me an hour and I'll show you the truth." An hour later, with clear data, he not only cleared his name, he left the room in silent respect. He didn't win with words, he won with composure. In today's world, where people are easily swept up in collective emotion, where fast reactions are encouraged, you'll stand apart and stand strong when you pause, observe, and respond only when necessary. Calm doesn't mean you're indifferent or submissive. On the contrary, it's proof you're not controlled by the world, you're controlling yourself. No one is born calm. It's a skill. And like any skill, it's built in the smallest moments, when traffic stalls your plans, when someone says something that cuts deep, when you want to retaliate but choose silence. Those are the moments that draw the line between someone led by circumstance and someone leading their own life. 2. When you stop trying to control everything, you find freedom. I used to be the kind of person who planned everything. Every day, every hour, even the conversations I'd have all rehearsed in my mind. I believed if I controlled well enough, everything would go as expected. But then there were mornings where everything fell apart. A call from my boss that threw off the schedule, a last-minute cancellation, an unexpected task hitting like an invisible punch. And what exhausted me most wasn't what happened, it was that I expected it wouldn't. We rarely realize that it's the desire to control everything that causes us to lose control within. You're not angry because someone's late. You're angry because you believe they should be on time. You're not upset because plans changed. You're upset because you imagined they would unfold perfectly. And when life, which doesn't care about your plans, shifts course, you feel like a failure. But the truth is, you didn't fail. You were clinging to something that was never yours to hold. Epictetus once said, "One of the first things you must learn is to clearly distinguish what belongs to you and what does not." That's the line between peace and torment. You can control how you speak, not how others hear. You can choose honesty, not who believes you. When you start letting go of what isn't yours to carry, you don't become weaker, you become free. I once tried to change a loved one through persuasion, advice, sacrifice, patience, but after years I realized the more I tried to control them, the more I lost myself. And the irony is this: only when I stopped trying to fix them did the relationship begin to heal. Not because they changed, but because I changed how I saw them. Letting go isn't giving up. It's a conscious decision, a quiet wisdom that my energy should go into changing what I can. Myself. Freedom doesn't come from controlling the world, it comes from no longer needing to. Imagine this. If tomorrow, every plan you made fell apart, could you still keep a calm mind? If yes, that's a sign you're truly free, not because everything is in your control, but because you no longer need it to be. 3. Give thanks before you complain. There was a time I woke up each morning with the same feeling. Lacking time, lacking motivation, lacking something I couldn't quite name. The day hadn't even begun, and my mind was already flooded with what I didn't have: an unstable job, shallow relationships, unachieved goals. And like clockwork, I began to complain in silence about the weather, the traffic, where I was in life. All of it felt true and all of it wore me down. Then one evening I stumbled upon a line from Seneca. It is not happiness that makes us grateful, but gratitude that makes us happy. I read it again, slowly. And suddenly I realized I had been living as if the world owed me something, as if peace must arrive only once everything is perfect. But that moment never came. Because once I gained one thing, I immediately reached for the next. Solve one problem, another appears. That cycle never ends. Unless I end it with one word: thank you. I tried something simple. Each morning before leaving bed, I whispered aloud, "Thank you." No specific reason, just a pause amid the rush. At first it felt hollow, but slowly I began to notice small things I used to overlook. The soft light behind the curtain, the smell of morning coffee, the fact that my body could still rise and walk. The more I said thank you, the more I realized life was never truly against me. It was simply unfolding, and I was the one choosing how to see it. You could have the whole world and still feel empty if you haven't learned gratitude. And you could be surrounded by lack and still feel full if you have. Gratitude doesn't erase pain, but it shields your mind from being consumed by bitterness. It won't make hardship easy, but it gives you the clarity to face it without falling. Instead of asking, "Why must I endure this?" ask, "What is this teaching me?" Instead of thinking, "I need more to be happy," ask, "What made me feel alive today?" And instead of starting the day with a sense of not enough, begin with one small but powerful act. Say thank you even if you don't yet know what for. Because if you're not grateful when you have little, you won't be grateful when you have much. And if you wait for a perfect life to feel joy, you may wait forever. But if you can give thanks even in scarcity, then you've found a kind of happiness that nothing outside you can give and nothing outside you can take. 4. Your mind is the gateway to destiny. I used to believe that what happened in life was shaped by circumstances where I was born, the job I had, the people I met. But one evening, after days of stress and sleepless nights, I sat staring at the ceiling and realized it wasn't life defeating me, it was my own thoughts. My body wasn't tired, but my mind was drained by the endless loop of questions. What if things get worse? Am I good enough? Am I wasting my time? These questions didn't come from anyone else, they came from within. Your mind is where everything begins. Before you act, you think. Before you give up, you doubt. Before you succeed, you believe you can. And if you don't govern the flow of thoughts within, you're living by a map of fear, not a map of reason. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Your life is shaped by the thoughts you repeat to yourself." He didn't say that as some distant philosopher, but as a man who once wrestled inside his own mind with pressure, with duty, with the loneliness of leadership. He understood that when the mind is occupied by doubt, even a throne cannot grant you freedom. And when the mind is lit by clarity, even in ruin, you can still preserve your dignity. I had a friend once who faced a severe illness. His body weakened daily, yet what struck me was how his attitude never broke. He said, "I can't choose the circumstance, but I can choose how I think about it." Each day, instead of asking, "Why me?" he asked, "What meaningful thing can I still do today?" And that mindset carried him through the pain not as a victim, but as someone still choosing to live. We can't stop the world from hurting us, but we can choose not to let the wounds define us. We can't block negative thoughts from knocking, but we can choose not to let them move in. And once you understand that every thought is a brick in the house you'll live in for life, you start choosing more carefully. The mind is not just where you process reality, it's where your future is planted. You can fill it with fear, judgment, and doubt and end up living in a withered garden. Or you can sow calm, resolve, and will and live in a garden small, yet strong enough to weather any storm. So ask yourself again, what did I think today? What did I say to myself? Am I shaping a fate guided by light or wandering through a darkness of my own design? 5. Attention is the most underrated power. One afternoon, I sat at my usual cafe, like every other day. People rushed around me, scrolling their phones, typing on laptops, talking to someone far away through a screen. But at the next table, an old man sat alone, holding a cup of tea, slowly watching through the window. And I realized he wasn't looking at anything in particular, just the slant of golden light spilling across the sidewalk. Yet the way he looked made one thing clear. He was fully present in that moment. And how often had I lived through an entire day while my mind drifted elsewhere? We live in an age of noise. Each day, thousands of messages fight for your attention, from phone screens, news feeds, street sounds, to unfinished thoughts in your head. And you end the day exhausted without knowing why. Not because you did too much, but because you scattered too much. Your mind wasn't here. It was stretched thin by everything but the present. Attention, though seemingly small, is your most precious resource. Because where your attention goes, your life takes root. If you only focus on your flaws, you'll always feel inadequate. If you only watch others, you'll always feel behind. But if you know how to return to the moment unfolding before you, to your breath, to the next word you're about to speak, you'll rediscover yourself in a world moving too fast. Epictetus once told his students, "Freedom doesn't come from controlling everything, it comes from controlling your attention." That's not just moral advice, that's a strategy for life. Because the one who controls their attention knows what to nurture and what to release. They don't get dragged into every battle, don't react to every insult, don't lose themselves in the whirlwind of the unimportant. Think about an ordinary day. You might pass a street blooming with flowers and not notice, because your mind is stuck on a missed call. You might sit beside someone you love and not be there, because your mind is checking messages. And you might live an entire life without truly living if you don't know how to return, take a breath, and choose what to give your attention to. So if you feel burnt out and can't explain why, try doing nothing extra. Just observe. See where your attention has gone. Because sometimes you don't need another solution or plan or piece of advice. You just need to bring your attention back to the present, to yourself, to what's unfolding right in front of you. 6. If you don't rest, your mind will go on strike. I used to pride myself on being unstoppable, always learning, always working, always pushing forward. I believed exhaustion was the price of success. Until one day, I found myself sitting in front of my computer, eyes open but unable to process the words on the screen. My head fogged like a clouded mirror. I reread the same paragraph 3 times and still had no idea what it said. What I needed wasn't more coffee. It wasn't more motivation. I needed rest. Modern society worships productivity like religion. We wear smartwatches to measure every step, install apps to optimize every minute, and treat rest like a luxury. But no one can run without stopping. No one can swim without surfacing for air. And no matter how strong your mind is, it too has limits. Seneca once wrote, "Even the sharpest blade needs rest to stay keen." A simple line, but one we often forget. If you keep swinging your sword through life's storms without stepping back to sharpen it, there will come a point when you have nothing left to fight with except your own exhaustion. Rest is not defeat. It's part of the strategy. An athlete doesn't train all day. A soldier doesn't hold a weapon through the night. And a sharp mind cannot be built on a foundation of sleep deprivation, chronic tension, and non-stop demands. You don't need to do more, you need to do more wisely. And wisdom only emerges when the mind has space to recover. Think of your brain as a whiteboard. Every thought, every decision, every worry is a line written on it. If you never wipe it clean, eventually there's no room left, and suddenly everything feels chaotic, not because you're weak, but because you're overloaded. Rest isn't just about sleep. It's about making room in your day, turning off notifications, stepping away from screens, walking without a goal, sitting still without a reason. It's those moments when you tell your mind, "I don't need to be doing something to have worth." Sometimes, just being is enough. Because if you keep draining yourself, your mind won't ask permission before it quits. It will do it silently through fatigue, fog, disconnection, or an unnamed sadness. And when that happens, every goal you once chased will slip further out of reach. Remember this: a rested mind is one that can go the distance. And sometimes it's only when you pause for a breath that you hear the clearest voice within. I'm still here. And I'm ready to begin again. 7. The morning shapes the rest of the day. There was a time when I started each day by reaching for my phone the moment I woke up. Messages, emails, news, vague social media updates. Within 10 minutes, my mind had been pulled in 10 different directions. I hadn't even brushed my teeth, yet I felt like I had already lived an entire day. And then I kept wondering why I was always tired, always irritable, always chasing something I couldn't name. The answer, it turned out, was simple. I had begun the day wrong from the very first step. The morning is not a throwaway part of the day. It's the foundation. If you build a house on sinking soil, it won't take a storm to shake it. A breeze will do. Your mind is no different. If you begin your day in a reactive state, dragged by outside noise, you'll live the rest of it like someone being chased, not like someone leading the way. Marcus Aurelius asked himself each morning, "What will I face today, and what attitude will I choose?" He wasn't seeking a perfect day, he was preparing his mind. Because he understood, the one who doesn't prepare in the morning has already, without knowing, surrendered the rest of the day. I once tried something small. I left my phone away from the bed and gave the first 10 minutes to stillness. No special thoughts. Just letting the breath return, letting the body wake naturally. Then I added another habit, writing down 3 feelings I wanted to carry through the day. Not to do items, but to be states like calm, focused, kind. Just that helped me recalibrate amidst the chaos. We often think that changing our life requires a major shift. But sometimes, all you need is to begin the morning differently. A moment when you don't let the world in too soon. A space to remind yourself, I'm not the product of news, notifications, or emails by 7 a.m. I'm the one choosing how I'll live today. The morning doesn't define who you are, but it shapes who you'll become throughout the day. And if you want to change a year, start with a month. Want to change the month? Start with a week. But if you want to change yourself, begin with the next morning. 8. Clarity in vision, certainty in action. Some people go through life never seeing themselves anywhere beyond the present. They can't picture being healthier, calmer, or living another kind of life, not because they lack the ability, but because they've never allowed themselves to envision it clearly. Meanwhile, the most grounded people I've met all share one habit. They see the result in their mind before it takes form in reality. I remember a mentor once told me, if you don't know what the final image looks like, you won't know where you're going. At the time, I thought he meant goals like get rich or become successful. But he shook his head. No. I'm talking about how you want to live, how you want to feel about yourself when you wake up. And from that moment, I began to understand. Imagining isn't daydreaming. It's outlining the life you are actively building. Neuroscience has shown that your brain doesn't sharply distinguish between vividly imagined experiences and real ones. When you visualize yourself speaking calmly, solving problems wisely, or walking with confidence, your brain begins to wire as if that is truly happening. And if you repeat it enough, your brain will choose that route over the old path of panic, doubt, or delay. Marcus Aurelius, even in the midst of war and politics, still made time to write about the man he wanted to be. Calm, just, unmoved by emotion. He imagined that man before he became him. And not to impress others, but to realign himself daily in the face of relentless demands. You can apply this to any part of life. Before a difficult meeting, close your eyes for a few seconds and picture yourself speaking steadily, listening intently, and walking out with your self-respect intact. Before the day begins, imagine how you'll meet hardship, not with tension, but with agency. Imagination doesn't turn you into someone else. It brings you back to who you are, the version of yourself you haven't yet believed you can live as. And when your vision is clear, your brain begins to pave the path, your body starts adjusting, your habits shift. It's not magic. It's your mind preparing for success before it arrives. And if you're still unsure, start simple. Imagine a stronger version of yourself already standing where you want to go. Then place your hand on your heart and ask, how can I move toward that person today, not someday? 9. Breathing is the mind's reset button. There was a time I found myself in a tense conversation where every word could trigger an argument. My heart was racing, palms sweating, head full of comebacks I hadn't said yet. But instead of reacting, I instinctively did one thing. I took a deep breath. And in that small moment, I felt as though I'd stepped outside the dialogue just far enough to see it with clarity. We often get swept up in emotion before we even realize we've lost control. A rude remark sparks anger, a look makes us defensive, a small mistake makes us doubt ourselves. And in most of those moments, we react without thinking, like someone has flipped a switch and awakened a self we later don't recognize. But here's the truth. There's another switch in you. Not in your hand, not in your words. It's in your breath. Your breath is the only thing that's always with you, silent, non-judgmental, needing no tool to access. In Stoic philosophy, sages often spoke of the inner state as something to guard more fiercely than status, money, or power. And the simplest way to guard it is to pause and breathe. You don't need a long meditation or a quiet room. You can try it right now. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 7, exhale for 8. This isn't mystical ritual. It's a neurologically proven technique that soothes the sympathetic nervous system, the part that handles stress. Just one round of breathing like this can calm a pounding heart and settle a storming mind. I used to think control meant keeping a straight face in confrontation. But slowly I realized, control isn't on your face, it's in your breath. The one who controls their breath controls their reaction. And the one who controls their reaction controls their life. Pay close attention. The quick-tempered tend to breathe fast. The anxious often forget they're even breathing. The calm ones, they breathe long, slow, steady. It's not coincidence. It's the result of practice of learning to step out of the emotional spiral before it swallows every trace of reason. So next time you feel yourself on the edge of losing control, don't search for the perfect comeback or clever argument. Search for your breath. Inhale, hold, and exhale, as if you've just set down a heavy weight. Because sometimes, the only thing standing between you and an irreversible mistake isn't reason, it's a well-timed breath. 10. Silence is a spiritual medicine. I used to fear silence. Whenever there was no noise, no phone notifications, no one talking or texting, I felt like I was being left behind. In those moments, my mind would automatically fill the space with anxiety. Am I falling behind? Am I being forgotten? And so, I'd turn on music, a video, a short clip, anything to escape the quiet I hadn't yet learned to accept. But what I didn't know was that silence was exactly what I needed most. We live in an age where noise is the default. If we're not doing something, we must be listening to something. If we're not watching, we must be talking. But when you're constantly surrounded by external sound, you lose the ability to hear your internal voice. And strangely enough, the most important answers in life tend to arrive only when you've grown quiet enough to hear them. Seneca once wrote, "We are not afraid of solitude, we're afraid of facing ourselves in solitude." That's the truth most people avoid. But if you're brave enough to sit down, shut off the devices, and just be with yourself for 10 minutes each day, no goal, no expectation, something will quietly rise, a sharper clarity, a smaller fear, a question answered. Silence is not a terrifying void. It's the open space where clarity takes root. And if you're searching for calm in this noisy world, perhaps you don't need another piece of advice, just one quiet minute. 11. Use your hands to calm your mind. There are times when your mind is spinning so fast you can't meditate, can't read, can't even breathe properly. Every "just calm down" feels meaningless when your thoughts are like a dark room with every window flung open in a storm. I've been there. And what first pulled me out wasn't some deep philosophy, it was washing the dishes. I'm not joking. When my hands touched warm water, repeating that simple motion, something inside me slowed down. Not because doing dishes is delightful, but because it has a beginning, an end, and a rhythm the body can follow. While the mind was still tangled, my hands quietly brought me back to the present. Stoic philosophy has always emphasized right action, not rushed action, not escapist action, but action that returns you to reason, to reality, to wakefulness. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Proper action is the remedy for a disordered mind," and one of the simplest forms of action is using your hands. Watch closely. The more chaotic you feel, the more you want to think your way out. But sometimes you don't need another thought. You just need to wipe down a table, fold a shirt, water a plant, write a few lines by hand. These physical movements are not distractions from thought, they're bridges back to the present, where the mind finds grounding through sensation instead of spinning endlessly in anxiety and speculation. By giving your hands something to do, you give your mind a reason to stop panicking. Not because the problem disappears, but because you're restoring your capacity to face it with clarity. Intentional action, no matter how small, is a gentle reminder, I'm still here and I'm still choosing. That is how you regain mastery, not by starting in the mind, but in the hands. I wasn't born calm. I used to be quick to react, quick to anger, easily offended by the smallest things. But the more I've lived through turbulence, the more I've realized those who remain composed do so not because they face no storms, but because they choose not to let the storm consume them from within. And calmness doesn't arrive naturally. It comes from repeating small, deliberate actions every day, breathing at the right moment, staying silent when it matters, choosing to reflect instead of retaliate, doing what is kind even when no one asks for it. I don't believe in strength measured by loud voices or hurried steps. I believe in the strength of one who can sit still in the storm, who knows when to say no, who dares to refuse in order to preserve the clarity of their mind. In a world where everyone is trying to speak faster, live harder, win at all costs, the one who pauses to observe, to give thanks, to act with intention is the one living a life of depth. And I'm learning to become that kind of person day by day, in silence. If you've made it this far, you're likely not just looking for a way to stay calm, you're searching for a different way of living. A way that's not pulled by the strings of the outside world, not dragged by fleeting emotions, not defeated by things beyond your control. And if there's one thing I hope you carry with you after this video, it's not a checklist of what to do, but a quiet conviction that you are capable of living with steadiness, clarity, and grace even when the world doesn't go your way. Please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss future content, because the journey of building a resilient mind must be nourished constantly with reminders, with practice, with community. And finally, if there's one thing worth remembering, calmness is not the gift you receive when life is quiet. It's the gift you create for yourself in the middle of the storm. I'll see you in the next video.